It is draft season, obviously. Well, it's draft week. Excuse me. It's draft
Draft week.
week.
Yes.
Draft
Mhm.
week, and we're recording this on a Monday. But we wanted to make sure that we got our Vikings draft slash Vikings expert, Mikey Ryan. Welcome to the show again, Mikey. No further
Yep.
introduction needed.
Yep.
Whatnot. So, welcome back, and we got a lot to talk about with these Vikings, huh, Mikey?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's so much stuff we gotta go through.
Exactly. So let's just hit it right off the bat here. So everyone's talking about it. Everyone's saying the Vikings are going to take a quarterback. The Vikings are going to take a quarterback. So we decided, well, let's take a look at some of these prospects. Let's see what scenarios the Vikings could do with these guys that are coming through. So I want to start off with the most obvious one, and the one that I think circulated the most so far is Hendon Hooker.
Yep.
And Mikey, and we'll get right to Voldy right after. But do you see this as the Vikings trading back to get more picks because they know that he's probably going to be there in, let's just say, late first, early second? Or do you see them kind of trading up to solidify, hey, he's got a lot of talent. We want to make sure we get our guy. What do you
hmm
think, Mikey?
It's all dependent on how much they run on quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
Henry Hooker is probably the fifth, sixth guy on people's boards for a lot of it. Ideally, I would love them to trade back and get him, like people are predicting him maybe to be a very early day two, very late day one type of prospect, right? So drafting or trading back maybe to get like let's say like the 31st or 32nd pick to get him there, along with accruing, maybe get like a second round pick for it or something like that. That would be like the ideal situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see us drafting or trading up to get him. I think it's either he's going to fall to what do we have, the 23rd? Yeah, he's going to either
Yep.
fall to 23 and we select him there, or we trade back and try to select him late first, early second.
Yeah. And if they, let's just say if they do that and they decide, we want to make sure that we add some pieces to the defense, and there's some good pieces in that late round,
Yep.
early day
Mm-hmm.
two that you can be like, hey, check this out. Maybe they go with that. So, Voldy, what do you think about that scenario? Most likely they trade back, draft Hendon Hooker, go from there.
I kind of like what Mickey was saying. If he's there, I think they should definitely go get him. But I don't see, like he said, I don't see the Vikings really going out of their way to move up and go get him because you got to throw in the fact, obviously coming off the torn ACL and late in the season too. You don't expect him to start right off the bat as well. He's probably going to start on the PUP list, or at least depending on how well that knee is doing for him, if he's going to be able to, go into rookie mini camp, and then obviously whether he's going to be able to participate in OTAs, training camp, and leading up to the start of the regular season. Where would you see him even fitting into with Kevin O'Connell's system? And obviously, as that quarterback room is looking to fill up in many ways too, how that's going to be able to factor into the Vikings' decision to go after him too. If he's there, I have no problem getting him at 23. But then again, the way things have been with the Vikings, maybe it's time to kind of shake things up a little bit and maybe go after a guy with this offseason that has been creating a lot of cap friendly moves as well, getting rid of guys on the back
Mm-hmm.
ends of their contracts, and now that's going to help them too. Some of the moves they've made this offseason, I wouldn't be surprised the Vikings go after and try to move up in a situation just to create a little bit of a different mystique for the Wild here. I should say the Vikings, I should say, going for the Vikings here into the draft coming up here this week.
There's been a lot of talk even today. Peter King saying that the Vikings will select Anthony Richardson. We've heard great things. We think that there is opportunity that he might go to the Texans, or he might go a little bit later. Maybe if he stays in the top 10. I just I there's a lot to like and there's a lot to dislike about Anthony Richardson.
Yep.
Mhm,
So, Mikey,
for sure.
do you think that the Vikings have Richardson on their radar at all, or do you think that, or do you think it's worth trading up to get a guy like Anthony Richardson at this point?
Yeah, I think the Vikings definitely have them definitely have him on their radar, right? He's an outstanding talent, like everything in terms of like the tangibles that you look at, right?
Mhm.
It's all great. Like there's a reason he's shot up the board so much and he's been this much of a talk prospect, right?
Mhm.
Would we trade up and get him? I think it's really dependent on what the Texans decide to do with the number 2 pick, right?
Right.
They're really in the limbo spot and say if they like trade back a little bit because if they don't like a lot of the quarterbacks, especially CJ Stroud, I've been hearing rumblings that they might not like him as much as people initially thought. And it depends on who's our trade partner because the Colts 100% are looking for quarterback. I think it's already known that they have their eye on one of the top 4, right? The Texans, we don't know. That could be a potential trade partner, but what I've been seeing is a lot of the Cardinals is going to be like the one that we go with, right? But jumping up there is huge. It's going to take a lot. It's going to take at least this first round pick, at least probably next year's first round pick, and probably one of the guys we need to move, like Daniil or Zadarius or Dalvin. Probably would be my guess would be like Daniil or Zadarius, depending on which need they want, either an edge like the down edge rusher or like a pseudo linebacker edge rusher, right? It's going to take a lot of capital to get to him. Do I think he is worth that capital? It's a really big risk, big reward, right? Kind of deal. I think he probably potentially could be worth it, but does KOC risk losing? Does KOC and Quince risk losing their jobs over this pick, right? Because that's what would happen. Like if we traded up to get him at the number 3 spot, you're tying your careers to what Anthony Richardson does. But that might just be what the Vikings need to get a jump start. Try to get to that next level and try to worry about all the other stuff, the defensive stuff, either later in the draft or with the free agency, whoever's out there still, right?
Right.
I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'm just saying it's a huge risk.
Yeah, definitely. Voldy, what do you think?
With Richardson, he's really been the surprise out of, obviously the combine and his pro day as well. I mean, throwing balls and hitting the top of the roof at the Florida, the practice facility there. I mean, that's no surprise that he is a, otherworldly talent too. And the fact that he's turned this much heads already is no surprise. But again, it comes down to how much are you willing to put into it. Obviously, it's not going to be a straight swap for swap player for a pick or vice versa as well. You're definitely going to need to get a team or two to come along with it in order to get someone like Richardson onto your team too. And if it does end up working out that way, how long are you willing to wait is the thing. And are we going to get another Kellen Mond situation as well, where we're going to give him the benefit of a doubt. And if it doesn't work, then, well, we got egg all over our face yet again, and getting burned yet again by another SEC quarterback. I could definitely, I don't want to say I'm comfortable. I'm uncomfortably comfortable with the idea of Josh Richardson getting drafted by, Richardson getting drafted by the Vikings. I mean, it would be interesting, like Mikey said, high risk, high reward situation. But is the risk worth it? I don't want to say yes, but I don't want to say no, because once you get him into the system and, get him acclimated with the playbook and KOC style too, it could very well be a good situation overall. I mean, is he going to start week 1? No. Is he going to start maybe 2 years from now? We'll see. I mean, that's what we're looking at here for the Vikings too. Is it going to be next season or is it going to be the year after? It all depends. It's all really in Kirk's hands too. But I think getting Richardson, if he's available at 23, but I think he's going to be long gone if he comes by our way. But if he's there too, it's another good opportunity for the Vikings to strike.
Here's what I'm going to say, and I'm kind of in the same boat as both of you. I would not trade up to go get him.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think we need to understand, with what we've seen, because he has lowlights on YouTube. So if you look up Anthony Richardson's lowlights on YouTube, you'll see some. But there are times where the guy's spectacular and he's very good, but that makes me uneasy. And I don't say that, thinking that, well, he's just going to be terrible, because I don't want to say that, because I think he's got a lot of potential. If he drops a 23, I'd be shocked. I mean, the Vikings would have to at that point.
Yeah.
Because think about it this way. You sit behind Kirk. I mean, Kirk, I don't think has gotten seriously hurt ever in his career or anything like that. So that he's going to learn.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood.
Yeah,
I did that right as I said that. And with Kirk, learning under Kirk, I think there'd be a lot of good things that he can learn. But I worry, because I also think that it's such a big risk that at this point it's not something that you want to put all your chips on with him. And I think Kwesi and KOC, a lot of this, I think the speculation and everything, they're using it as smokescreen, right? And this is the time to use it, because then teams start to second guess, or things like that. So there's two more guys, and we'll kind of go through this a little bit quickly. But CJ Stroud. Okay. There's been a lot of talk that he might fall. He might just, it doesn't seem realistic right now. But again, anything could happen.
Right.
If he drops to, let's just throw out a number. If he drops to, let's just say 7 or something like that, no one's taking him. If you're Minnesota, a team like Minnesota, do you push all in your chips and say, let's go get him? Or do you say, I don't know if that's worth the risk? Mikey, what do you think?
I think you have to at least give it a shot, right? Because 7's what I believe the Raiders right now.
Yeah.
They already have their quarterback, right? They have Garoppolo.
Yep.
I think at that point you have to try to fire the bullet. You got to try to take the shot. I think CJ Stroud is, he's been in the top 2, him and Bryce Young. It's always been the conversation this entire offseason, right? And for good reason. They both have everything you kind of look for in a quarterback. Bryce Young's a little more of a composed passer, where CJ Stroud's kind of you can mold him to be your quarterback, right? He's got a little more of the rough edges. He's younger, he's taller, right? He's got the prototypical build, to where you kind of have to take the shot there, right? I think as most Minnesota Vikings fans, if you trade up to 7 to get CJ Stroud, I think we're calling it a dub, and we're just sure, we'll figure out the defense. We'll figure out the defense later. We got our quarterback of the future at that point. So I think it's definitely worth the risk, right? I think the risk at that point would be a little more mitigated. It wouldn't be as big of a risk, but it's definitely, the reward would be there.
I think before we get to Voldy here, I think the one downside about Stroud is his size. He's a little bit shorter, give or take, but I think you can get away with that, because people have proven hey, it doesn't matter what, how tall you are or anything like that. You can be still very effective in this National Football League. So, Voldy, what do you think? Do you think 7 around there, definitely trade up to get Stroud?
Get the trade up and get him. Yeah, I would think so. I mean, you would definitely put it all out there and figure it out. I mean, you can get guys off the street to play defense relatively easily. I mean, it's
Yeah.
worked for the Patriots for God knows how long with Bill Belichick at the forefront. But I think you'd go in for a guy like C.J. Stroud. Yes, obviously the size is the big thing too, but playmaking ability is playmaking ability, and you'd like to see that, especially at the NFL level too. And as it's taken other Ohio State quarterbacks a little bit longer to get adjusted and get acclimated. Justin Fields is not going to be terrible forever, and especially with him, the first couple of seasons taking a lot of licks and obviously getting more comfortable with the way the play and the speed of the game, that could very well be CJ Stroud in a couple of years too, if he gets that opportunity. But I think if you want to go all in and go after him, I think it would be that time right at that 7th spot for sure.
So keep an eye on it. Let's see how it progresses and go from there. Let's move on to this other one. There has been a mock draft, gentlemen, that has the Vikings trading up to that 2nd spot and taking Will Levis.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I think we might have some different opinions right here. So I can't wait. Let's Mikey, what are your thoughts on Levis? The Vikings would have to trade, let's just say Za'Darius or Cooks, guys like that, Daniil or whatever, at that 2nd spot. I mean, is that too absurd at that point to trade up to get a guy like Levis?
Trading up to 2, right, it's going to be a lot, right? Trading up for 2 from Levis, I'm not a fan. Not a fan. Not a fan. I'm telling you, Will Levis and like Voldy, opinion might be different. I think it is, but Will Levis reminds me a lot about like what Trubisky was pre-draft. Like not necessarily in the like the tangibles, right? Like everyone talks about like how good Trubisky was, but it's 1 year. That's the same thing. Will Levis had 1 year at Kentucky, I believe. I'm not entirely sure. But it's like, come on. Like he's a good guy. He's a good quarterback, right? I think he will have some success. I just don't rate him as like the other 3. I think Will Levis is somewhere like middle of first round, just because quarterbacks are so inflated, right? In their draft capital. But if you're trading up to the number 2 spot, you take Richardson, you take Stroud. I think Bryce Young has already been signed for with the Panthers. I think that's a done deal. But you take those 2. If you're trading up for Will Levis, it's a head scratcher for me for sure.
Well, there we go. Voldy, what do you think?
Moving up to 2 to get Will Levis at number 2, I want to call it 2 things. A sexy pick is what it is right there, because you're really putting yourself out there in many different arenas as well. The smart fan would say that's a terrible decision, but I think you look at the guy. Obviously, the tangibles are there too. Guy is yoked. Guy can throw his way out of anything as well. Playing in the SEC, yes, he did play at Kentucky 1 true year. I think maybe a year and a half starting at Kentucky as well. Sometimes it's all you need. Worked out well for Mitch Trubisky. He's still in the NFL. So, I mean, a lot of guys have done more with less in that area too. But the move up to number 2 to get Will Levis, I think you might as well just pack up the bags and move the team to somewhere else, I think, at that point, because there's not going to be a whole lot of fandom after that. But at this point, you don't want to throw anything out with that, but I'm moving up to 2 to get Will Levis, I think, is somebody just probably putting that out there for clickbait in many areas.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Well, for one, I got to go with Mikey on this one. I don't like that. I do not like that one bit, going up to that 2nd pick to get the guy like. I am really not high on Levis, and I'm going to tell you why. And Mikey, I see the Trubisky element to it, like you were saying, but I believe that Levis is like a lot better than Mitch Trubisky, though. That's just my humble opinion with kind of how comparing the 2, because Trubisky was just so inaccurate, so just erratic in his throws down the field too.
Yeah.
Levis, he's got the strong arm. He can hit that deep ball. which we want to see, right? You know, JJ, you add in like a speedster in there with maybe in the draft, who knows? But here's what I'll say. If the Vikings see Levis sitting there at 23, do it. I think you do it because let's just say you look at Hooker, and I do like Hendon Hooker. I think that's a guy that you can really develop. He's 25. He had the injury. We get it. But also guys have come back from that, and he doesn't have to start right away. Let's just see if the Vikings, if they see him at 23, they take him. I won't be peeved. I will actually be like, oh, okay, I can see where they're going with this because Levis isn't going in there week one. It's Kirk Cousins, right?
Yep.
So he learns under Kirk Cousins for a year. We'll just kind of throw quarterbacks out the window here for a second. Mikey and Voldy, I asked you to put, three guys that you want to see the Vikings take. And, I non-quarterbacks and whatnot. And then we'll move on to like a prediction, like, hey, maybe this is what I think they're going to do. Even though it's probably going to be wrong, we're just going to throw it out there.
Yeah.
So, Mikey, who are your three guys that you'd like to see the Vikings take, or you think that they should take, either if they trade back or stay at 23 or trade up? What do you got?
Sure. So if we stay, I think a good one that we'd probably select is Deontay Banks out of Maryland. He's exceptional corner, I think. I think he's rated highly in everybody's boards. I think he's at least in top 3, maybe top 2 corners of this draft. He's got the intangibles we need on the outside. I think in Brian Flores' defense, he's great man-to-man, plays a lot of press. He's seen that a lot of the time in Maryland. He's a big corner. He's like 6 foot, I think 200 pounds, somewhere around there. So he can play with the big boys, right? He can get up in your face, play with the NFL wide receivers, not get bullied around. He's got those tangibles that you look for in every corner. His tape looks really good. I think he is very solid at that pick if we want to go defense, right? And I think we should go defense because our defense was the porous. It's a light word. Porous is very light for them. If we didn't want to go defense, right? I think I talked to him about him before, but Jordan Addison, the wide receiver, out of USC. I think he'd be plug and play. Put him at the slot receiver. We've got an explosive offense at that point, right? We got every position covered. Kirk God forbid, whichever quarterback goes in, if Kirk goes down, knock on wood, right? It'd be one of the more explosive offenses in the league, right? We'd be able to dink and dunk, and we have JJ, right? Take the top over the defense. He can do everything. But to have a good slot receiver, counterpoint to TJ Hawkinson, right, as your safety outlets, I think the defense would look scary and it'd be very hard to cover for every defense in the NFL. And then the third guy I think we could probably take in the draft is Brian Breesy out of Clemson, the sophomore. He's very young, right? So he's still got a lot of raw talent we could probably improve, but when you're on the defensive line, you kind of do get a little bit of leeway in terms of like you can kind of just go out and play, right? Just go out, attack, get to the ball, you'll be fine, right? But he's huge. He's like 6'6", like 300 pounds, like a huge disruptor on the defensive line. I think with that height, depending on this, I think he's really athletic, right? But depending on what he wants to play, you could throw him at the 3 technique. He'd be perfect at that, right? Or you could throw him down the middle if you want him to be like more of that run stopping nose guard or defensive tackle that we really want, right? We really want to see that going forward because our run defense, as long as with the pass defense, not great. So we need to kind of rebuild this defense back up to what we want to see it, right? So I think that would also be an excellent selection at 23 if we decided to stay. So that's my top. Those are my 3 prospects, at least in the first round, that I'd be very comfortable if we stayed, just to see what we could get.
I think that's a really good list. I also think too that emphasizing the defensive stuff, like Breesy you mentioned, And then Banks, I mean, the D-backs right now with Byron Murphy is nice. I mean, we like it,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but we need a little bit more depth,
Yeah.
and
We need
yeah,
bodies that are talented.
exactly. So I like the Banks thing. I think a lot of people aren't super, super high on Banks, but to me, I just think, well, let's see. I mean, we got a new defensive coordinator. Let's see how it goes. Breesy, you pair him with Harrison Phillips, in there. Hey, that's looking pretty good. I
Yep.
like that with our guy James Lynch, who I think is still, a young guy that can still, get it done. He's had flashes. We just want to see more consistency in the run game or run defense, I should say. So we'll see. Voldy, your three, please.
Yeah, so I went more of a defensive minded first round, especially with three
Sure.
options that, certainly have obviously name recognition, playmaking ability, and obviously depth is going to be a big thing too, especially the Vikings want to make some moves either leading up to or even into the draft night experience as well. And one name that kind of came to mind and that's been floated around on a few mock drafts is Joey Porter Jr. as well. Of course, his dad, many years in the NFL. He's a corner out of Penn State. His dad, obviously, a great linebacker, and is now on the coaching side of things too. But he's a guy that's definitely put himself very high, especially going into this past season as well with Penn State, to put himself very high on a few draft boards too. So pair him up with the defensive backfield that definitely needs as many bodies and be a good complementary young piece as well with Byron Murphy too on the back end would be a nice addition in that first round selection. And another name too that's kind of been plus or minus a few spots around the Vikings pick, and that was certainly going to be much higher than where he is probably right now, is Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle
That's
out
a
of
good one.
Georgia. Yeah, I mean, that's a guy that up until what happened off the field here with Georgia too, he was probably going to be, if not a consensus, he was going to be a very top three, if not number one overall draft pick. And then everything that led up to
Right.
the off the field issues, we'll certainly say, has kind of hurt his draft stock. So that would be a very poignant piece because we know the defensive tackle position and obviously the defensive line has been a revolving door the last 4 or 5 years with the Vikings, but still quite productive even in the short stints in with the D line for the Vikings too. And another piece to be on the other side of the defensive line too, to be helpful if Daniil is still around, or maybe even building into the future, is another name that I've been kind of keeping my eye on for multiple reasons. That's being Lucas Van Ness from Iowa, another defensive end. He's a guy that again, another one that's been plus or minus a few spots on the draft board too. But if the Vikings are considering quite possibly moving on from Daniil with the contract, maybe even moving up in the draft, or maybe getting a couple of stock picks towards the back end, he's a guy that's been floated around maybe mid to late first round, early second round, but still quite productive, especially with a defense from Iowa that's been very stout, especially in his time as well. So those were a few names that I kind of threw out there early for that first round pick for the Vikings.
I like that. I think that's a sneaky one, that last one with Lucas
Mhm.
Van Ness. I think that's
Mhm.
sneaky. I mean, even if they go, or even if they kind of are done with Zedarius, I mean, even too,
Even
you can
him,
do a
yeah.
draft day
Yep.
trade as well. So I like that. Um, I'll give you my three, and I'm gonna it's kind of a mix. So I'll go. It's a little bit of offense, a little bit a couple defensive guys. My first one, and Mikey, you remember this when you filled in for Shield the other couple weeks ago. Quentin Johnson from TCU.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If there was, it seems like he would be there at 23 if the Vikings decide to, stay put. I
Right.
think you pair him with Jefferson, and you see kind of how they are able to work together. I mean, let's not forget, guys, we got KJ Osborne too.
Yep.
So, I mean,
Yep. For
there's a
sure.
lot of good things with this wide receiver core. And with Adam Thielen moving on, I like Johnson. I think he's a go up and get it type of guy. And again, TCU, There's a reason why they went to the national championship game. I mean, they got destroyed, but it doesn't mean that, that's on Quentin Johnson or anything. So I think that's a guy you really have to strongly consider if you really want to have a really good offense with that. So my second one, I'll say, is kind of more the sticking with that offensive route with Jordan Addison. And Mikey, you mentioned it too. You add him as the slot. Kirk, I think, really does well with guys that come out of the slot. And I think that if you add him with Jefferson, KJ Osborne, that's going to give you a lot of a nice deep threat that you didn't really have with Adam. But now that you have a speedster like that and it can come out of the slot, hey, you're in business, right? So I'd start to, kind of look at that as well. And my third one, I've been kind of back and forth on this, and it's something that I think would be very intriguing just to kind of see where people are, leaning towards. And there's there's been a lot of corners that have been, put up there and, seeing how things, pan out. But I gotta agree with Voldy. Joey Porter Jr. is someone that I think would be a possible steal if he falls. And I think that's something. I think he's a corner that Flores could really mold into a really great player. And if you pair him with Byron Murphy there, that defense is looking pretty doggone good in that with those D-backs. We still have Harrison Smith, Dirty Harry in back there. You have Cam Bynum, who's been, just doing really well too. I worry about linebackers and things like that, but I want to see in that second round, maybe they get somebody that can, come in. Brian Asamoah, don't forget about him either. I mean, that's a guy that I think they can do a lot of good things within the new Flores defense. So, all right, guys, to end things off, we know that the bold predictions it's probably not going to happen because this is so unexpected. Almost every draft is unexpected, right? So, Mikey, what is your bold prediction? What are the Vikings going to do in the draft on Thursday?
So, my bold prediction, I think we're gonna have 2 first-round draft picks, I think, this year. I think we're going, I know, right? I think we're probably going to stay at 23, but I think if we really like someone, like either in the mid-round or even like after we pick, right? I think we have the pieces in place. I know we need to offload some of the contracts. We talk about Cook, we talk about Hunter, talk about Za'Darius all the time, right? I think this would be the ideal time to if we wanted to offload those contracts, right, get them on other teams and go get some nice young pieces, either defensively or, hey, if someone falls down, say, like we talked about quarterbacks this entire time, something like Will Levis falls down, I wouldn't be a huge fan, but hey, if they like him, they like him. Or if like Anthony Richardson falls down or CJ Stroud falls down, you got to go and get them, right? But I would like to see 2 first-round picks, kind of like a Rick Spielman type of deal where we go and kind of wheel and deal and get a lot of these picks because we need them. We need them bad.
Yep. So do you have selections for those 2 first rounds? What do you got?
I'm gonna say we're gonna go in the middle. So I gotta pull up the draft order here. Probably let's just say throw out a hat like the Patriots or something like that, right? We trade with the Patriots and we grab at that point probably Anthony Richardson gone. So let's just say at 14 we grab Will Levis. I would say that would probably be the pick there. Yeah, it would have all these great. And then add 23. I think I like Joey Porter Jr. I really do. I think he's a great corner. I just think he might be gone at that point. So that's why I picked Deonte Banks. But either one of those at 23, I think would be excellent choices.
All right. That's a pretty bold one. So, Voldy, what's yours, my friend?
I look at the way the draft has gone over the years with the Vikings too, with the Rick Spielman era, partnering with guys like Brad Childress. If we're talking Leslie Frazier, Mike Zimmer, and of course, Kevin O'Connell as well. But you look at where we're at right now. New GM, new front office. Last year was kind of, we're making it up as we go. Here's our draft class. This is the first true draft class that Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell are looking at here. They've had a full year under their belts. Let's pick the team that we want. And for too long, the Vikings have been stay in our spot, fall where go where the chips may lie. It's worked out well in the past. I mean, it worked out how we got Justin Jefferson, when the Eagles took Jalen Reagor, but yet the Vikings still ended up with Jalen Reagor. Another story, another time as well. But I think this is the draft for the Vikings break out of their shell and make something happen. Not only are they going to get multiple chances in round number 1, but I think they also get a little something on top of it all as well. It's going to take some coordination. It's going to be one of those, you pick this guy, we're going to give you our pick, we'll pick this guy in your stead, flip flop, everybody's happy at the end of the day. A little dealing under the table, if you will. So I think the Vikings are going to move up in the draft, and just so happens to be in a situation, we've talked about it before. I do think that they go after a young quarterback. I think they go after a guy that is quite prominent in many features, maybe not so much out of the SEC, but just one thing that, continues to be talked about in certain circles, but maybe isn't being overly talked about. I think the Vikings go out, make a deal. It's just right for a certain team that's got a very, let's just say a very crowded quarterback room right now. I think the Vikings go out and trade for Trey Lance. They get him out of San Fran. They bring him back to familiar circles. Maybe that helps take the ease off. Maybe that puts a whole other state of pressure. But sometimes the best diamonds are forged under the heaviest of pressure. And that's one thing we've talked about the last few weeks with Trey Lance. We don't know what we've got until we see it all play out. So I think the Vikings package a deal to not only get another pick in the first round, but also get Trey Lance and part of that contract. And I think with that pick, maybe they go out and they get a guy such as a Joey Porter Jr. as well. Maybe they move up. I forget where, I think they're sitting in the top 10 right now with San Fran, or maybe a little bit later on, but they still go and get him. And I think with that second pick in the first round, maybe they look towards that defensive line. I'd really like to see Lucas Van Ness, if he's still around in that spot too. Maybe it takes a little bit of that reshuffling, like I talked about, with one team picking him, flipping his rights over to them, while the Vikings pick for that other team too. That's my bold prediction for the draft coming up.
All right, I like that one.
Many puzzle pieces happening.
Yeah, many puzzle pieces happening. Here's mine, and this is something that I think is very possible in this situation. We kind of mentioned it before. I threw in the number 7. I think, Mikey, you said the Raiders would, be around then and there. I'm going to go out on a limb here, fellas. The Vikings are going to trade up, and this quarterback's going to fall. They're going to take CJ Stroud. He just spit. I can't believe that. Spit. But I think he is going to fall, and the Vikings are going to take him. They're going to trade up with Las Vegas. They're going to go out. They're going to get CJ Stroud. He's going to learn under Kirk Cousins, and we're going to get it done. That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say. So
that's a bold one.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
Borderline crazy.
Yeah, borderline crazy. But
wow.
I'm like I said, these predictions are probably wrong.